The courtroom fell silent. The two officers who had brutally handcuffed her just hours ago now stood frozen. Their faces drained of color as the heavy oak doors swung open. Black robes. Gavel in hand. Eyes cold as steel. The woman they'd mocked was walking toward the judge's bench. And in seconds, the power dynamic flipped. But how did a humiliating arrest on a rainy street lead to this jaw-dropping moment of justice? Stay with me. Rain hammered against the cracked windshield of Officer Daniel's patrol car. Midnight. Downtown Atlanta. Sirens wailing faintly in the distance. The city was a restless animal tonight. At the same time, a woman in a sleek gray suit walked briskly down Peachtree Street, clutching a folder close to her chest. Her name was Aaliyah Jackson. 38. Harvard Law graduate. Recently appointed as a federal judge, though the news hadn't hit the public yet, her first case was set to begin the next morning. But tonight, she wasn't a judge. She was just a black woman walking home after a late prep session at her office. She had taken off her heels, carrying them in one hand. Her tired feet splashed through puddles. She didn't know that two officers in a parked patrol car were watching her and making assumptions. "Looks suspicious," muttered Daniels, tapping his flashlight. His partner, Officer Riley, smirked. "Probably another loitering case. Let's check." Aaliyah heard the siren flash behind her. She turned calmly, expecting maybe a warning about the weather. Instead, the officers stepped out with the kind of swagger that came from unchecked power. "ID," Daniels barked. "Of course," Aaliyah said, reaching into her purse slowly. "I'm." "Hands where I can see them." Riley snapped. She froze, rain dripping down her face. "Sir, I'm reaching for my." "Hands up." Daniels shouted louder this time, as if volume equaled authority. Something shifted. Pedestrians slowed. A camera light blinked from across the street. The scene was forming, not of justice, but spectacle. She tried again, calm but firm. "I am a federal." "Turn around." Hands on the wall, Daniels interrupted. And that was the moment Aaliyah realized they weren't listening. They had decided who she was before she spoke. Within seconds, cold metal cuffs snapped against her wrists. Her folder slipped from her hands, papers soaking in the gutter. At the precinct, humiliation deepened. She was forced to sit in a holding cell. No one cared when she tried to explain. No one checked her credentials. She wasn't Judge Jackson here. She was just female, black, ID pending. Another loitering suspect, Riley joked to the clerk, sipping coffee. Wearing a business suit, though. "Fancy." Daniels chuckled. "Yeah. Must have stolen it." Their laughter echoed in the corridor. Hours passed. No lawyer. No phone call. Rain turned into dawn. Meanwhile, in a nearby courthouse, panic was quietly building. The new federal judge was supposed to preside over a high-profile police misconduct case at 10 a.m. involving two officers accused of wrongful arrest and abuse of authority. Her name was on the docket. Judge Aaliyah Jackson. But in holding cell number 4, Aaliyah sat on a cold bench, staring at the clock. 6 a.m. 7:15 a.m. 8:30 a.m. She knew she couldn't reveal her position too early. If she did, the officers might try to cover their tracks. She needed the entire chain of misconduct documented, not just for herself, but to expose how deep it ran. She made a choice. She stayed silent. At 9:05 a.m., the precinct captain arrived for his shift. One glance at the booking log and his blood ran cold. He recognized the name. "Where is she?" he barked. The clerk blinked. "Holding cell 4, sir." "Why?" "That's the new federal judge," the captain hissed. A stampede of rushed apologies followed. Keys jingled. Doors slammed. Officers scrambled like ants. But Aaliyah didn't flinch when they unlocked her cell. She stood tall, cuffs still on her wrists, eyes locked on Daniels and Riley. They looked at her like they'd seen a ghost. She didn't yell. She didn't argue. She simply said, "I'll see you, in court." And with that, she walked out escorted, but no longer powerless. What the officers didn't know was that the case she was about to oversee was about to become their own. 10:02 a.m., Courtroom 7B, Atlanta Federal Courthouse. The gallery buzzed with whispers. Reporters filled the benches, sensing a big story. Today's case was already controversial. 2 officers accused of racially motivated wrongful arrests. What no one knew yet was that the judge herself had just experienced the same injustice, at the hands of 2 different officers. Bailiff, all rise. Every head turned as Aaliyah Jackson stepped through the judge's door. She wasn't wearing the soaked gray suit anymore. She was in full black robes. Her hair was pulled back tight, her expression unreadable, a mixture of poise, fury, and calm power. The same officers who had cuffed her earlier? They were sitting in the witness section, scheduled to testify in support of their colleagues. Daniels crossed his arms, trying to act unbothered. Riley gave a nervous half-smile. Neither had fully processed what was about to happen. Aaliyah took her seat at the bench. The gavel struck once, sharp like thunder. Court is now in session. Silence. She scanned the room slowly, her eyes lingering on Daniels and Riley for a fraction too long. They shifted in their seats. The prosecution began their opening statement. But Aaliyah wasn't just listening. She was observing every reaction, every careless smirk, every whispered side comment between the officers. Her humiliation had burned into resolve. By the time the defense started cross-examining the first witness, a young black man who had been arrested while walking home, Aaliyah's heartbeat quickened. His story echoed her own from just hours ago. "I told them who I was," he said, voice trembling. "But they didn't care. They said people like me are always up to something." The defense lawyer objected. "Hearsay." Aaliyah leaned forward, voice calm but cutting. "Overruled." "Continue." Her tone sliced through the courtroom. Even seasoned attorneys shifted uneasily. Then, it happened. During a recess, Daniels and Riley approached the hallway water cooler, not realizing a live courtroom mic had been accidentally left on nearby. A reporter standing close recorded every word. Daniels whispered, "You think she recognized us?" Riley snorted. "Nah. They all look the same in those suits. Plus, who's gonna believe her? She was just some woman in the rain last night." Laughter. Careless. Arrogant. The recording spread through the courtroom in seconds. A bailiff rushed the audio to the bench. The moment Aaliyah heard it, her fingers tightened around the gavel. She ordered an immediate continuation on record. "Officer Daniels. Officer Riley. Approach the bench." The room froze. They hesitated. She repeated, colder, now. The 2 officers walked forward, suddenly very small beneath the weight of her gaze. She pressed a button. The hallway audio echoed through the courtroom speakers. Every word. Every laugh. Daniel's face went pale. Riley's jaw clenched. The gallery gasped. "Do you recognize those voices?" she asked, her voice steady. They exchanged terrified glances. Silence. "Let me make it easy," Aaliyah continued. "Those voices are yours. And that woman in the rain, the one you mocked, handcuffed, and threw into a holding cell, was me." The words hit like a bomb. Reporters jolted forward. The defense attorney dropped his pen. Even the prosecutor blinked in disbelief. Daniel stammered. Why, Your Honor, we— Silence, she snapped. This court isn't a stage for excuses. It's a place for truth. She removed her glasses slowly. And the truth is, the system you swore to uphold, you abused. The power dynamic had flipped entirely. The predators were now exposed, trembling under the very authority they had mocked. At that moment, the entire courtroom leaned in. The story that started in the rain had erupted under fluorescent lights, with millions watching as cameras rolled. But the final blow, and the moral hammer, was still to come. The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. The distant tap of a reporter's pen. Two officers who just hours ago dragged a woman into a cell now stood in shackles of their own making, not physical, but public, moral, and legal. Judge Aaliyah Jackson leaned forward. For years, she began slowly, her voice echoing across the chamber, this courtroom has heard stories like the one presented today. Innocent people stopped. Harassed. Arrested for existing in the wrong skin, at the wrong hour, in the wrong place. And too often, the system turned away. Her gaze locked on Daniels and Riley. But not today. She picked up the folder they'd thrown into the gutter the night before. It was still damp, the edges crinkled and stained. She held it up. This, she said, is what you threw away. Not just paper. Justice. Truth. Humanity. Daniel's throat tightened. Riley stared at the floor. She continued, her tone rising like a slow, controlled storm. You assumed my worth before you heard my words. You measured my humanity against your prejudice. You decided who I was, without ever asking. The prosecution requested that the officer's hallway remarks be submitted into evidence. Aaliyah didn't hesitate. Granted. Then came the twist. The district attorney announced that Daniels and Riley were being formally added as defendants to the ongoing misconduct case, effective immediately. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Reporters rushed to tweet. Headlines were being written in real time. Aaliyah didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply delivered the ruling with surgical precision. Officers Daniels and Riley are hereby suspended from duty pending a full federal investigation. This court recognizes their conduct as potential evidence of racial profiling, unlawful detention, and abuse of authority. Gavel strike. Boom. 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 It echoed like thunder. Daniels closed his eyes. Riley's hands trembled. The very system they believed would protect them had turned its spotlight inward. Outside the courthouse, the scene was electric. Protesters held signs. News anchors shouted into cameras. The story had gone viral within hours, not just because a black woman had become the judge, but because she had refused to let silence bury the truth. That night, Aaliyah sat alone in her office, the city lights painting her face gold. The rain had returned, tapping gently against the window like it had the night before. She whispered to herself, not as a judge, but as a human being. They thought they were arresting a suspect. They were really putting themselves on trial. The screen would fade to black here, leaving viewers with lingering questions. Small orange diamond, how many voices are never heard because they don't wear the robe? Small orange diamond, how many truths rot away in holding cells because no one listens?